Tonia here, your host of The Alchemy of Me, where we navigate the anatomy of humanity through the lens of science and spirituality. Let's unearth the layers and unravel the systems in place that dim who we are and how we live and experience life. On this journey together, we'll weave in an eclectic blend of mind-body energy medicine concepts, tools, and practices that'll nourish the seeds, the fire, that gold of intelligence that is you. This is an opportunity, your opportunity to reclaim, to rediscover, to transform, to alchemize you. The Alchemy of Me show starts now.
Hello. Tonia here, your host of The Alchemy of Me, where we navigate the anatomy of humanity through the lens of science and spirituality. And today I am so excited to be here with Tamara Leach, and I'm going to share a little bit about Tamara and her extensive background in the world of energy medicine. So Tamara is a dynamic force in the world of bodywork, energy healing, and shamanism. With nearly 3 decades of experience and a fiery passion for holistic wellness, Tamara is not just a talker, but a transformer, igniting minds and souls with her insights into consciousness and the boundlessness of human potential. Outside of her professional endeavors, Tamara finds solace and inspiration in nature, cultivating her connection to the earth through gardening and embarking on transformative journeys through travel. Her curiosity about consciousness drives her to continuously explore the depths of our multidimensional nature, seeking to unravel the mysteries of our existence and promote healing on both personal and collective levels. Get ready to be inspired, enlightened, and uplifted as Tamara invites us on a journey of healing and self-discovery on the Alchemy of Me. Welcome, Tamara. I am so pumped to be here with you. Is there anything you want to add? That was obviously an overview of a very, maybe just a little bit of you. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that was great, Tonia. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm super excited to be here and talk about one of my passions.
Perfect. Well, we can just dive right in because we could talk for days on this topic, and what we're talking about today, what we're going to explore and unpack is energetic blueprint. So mapping the body's subtle anatomy. And this is, I think for me, this topic, and I'm so excited that this was kind of where you landed on what we were going to talk about today, because I think as a mom, as a partner, as a human, as a scientist, as a shaman, as an entrepreneur, all these roles, like all these hats that we, as a daughter, there's probably a few other things. We could just keep going there. But there's so many different roles we play, so many different hats we put on in life, right? And when we are in this space, in time, in this physical form, there's this whole other part of us that we don't even really talk about, that we don't even really consider. And it's a weaving that isn't happening in some degrees, and it does in some others. It's a weaving that's happening that we aren't even aware of. And what I love about this this topic today is that we get to unpack this. We get to dive into the energetics, into that blueprint that is us. So starting there, looking at that, can you let's just get into it. So understanding the subtle body. So what is energetic anatomy?
Yeah, Tonia, thanks for that just brief, overview of all that whole capacity that we are, because it really is undervalued, under discussed. People have no idea. A lot of people have no idea of how we're even affected as as we move through life. So the subtle energy, subtle anatomy is basically, if you look at it, it's the things that aren't tangible with our senses, right? We have these 5 senses that help us orient in space and time. And those 5 senses, when energy or information is outside of those senses, science just ignores it, right? If we can't measure it, if we can't quantify it, if we can't put it into some basis of really taking it in and being able to, have just data for it, it doesn't exist. And so we don't really talk about it. So we have this prana, life force energy, chi, that is the basis of the energy that we're talking about with the subtle anatomy. And then how does that life force energy move through our being? Well, we have energy centers that energy comes in. Those are called chakras. And we have, channels in our body. So we have centers and we have channels. The channels are like your meridians in traditional Chinese medicine, and in, the Indian tradition, it's the nadis in yoga. They call them nadis. So there's the centers where the energy comes in. There's the channels that move through our body. And then we have these fields of energy that, our brains kind of think of it in a linear way, that they're, layers, but they're really webs that interconnect. So those are the basis kind of components of our subtle energetic anatomy, our fields, channels, centers, and then the energy itself that flows through. And everything is energy. I mean, if you think of molecules, they're atoms and cells vibrating, the space between them is way bigger than the little particles themselves. And so kind of the same thing in our body. If we're just this vibrating components of little cells, there's so much space. We think that we're really dense, but really there's so much more space in our being than our density is. And, when we think of the energy of that, that's the same kind of concept.
Yeah, I love that, because even just how the density, and that's speaking to more of like the science. So it is this dancing between the spiritual, I guess, the unseen and the seen, right? Which is super powerful, because we ask these questions like, oh, why do I feel this way today? Not really understanding, and maybe not asking the question as to why. What is it in my personal orbit that is affecting my energy? So I'm one thing you mentioned too. So, it's this is kind of more of this is calling in some of, I think, for my own personal confusion that I had years ago when I started dipping into this, this idea of the energetic anatomy, and all these wonderful individuals that have explored this throughout. I mean, it's been throughout time. I mean, I'm thinking of like back in the early 1900s, more recent scientists exploring, up until some more of the more recent, Joe Dispenza's Heart Math Institute type. But can you just go into a little bit more, kind of just the idea of, like you mentioned, nadis and all these different, there's so many different areas that we pull this information from, and just to acknowledge that maybe they're all kind of related, and there's the confusion sometimes is perhaps maybe just that they're coming from different traditions.
Totally. Yes, I like to say when I teach energy, or when I'm, talking to people about energy in my practice, is that, really the first time a mother laid her hands on her baby, we're doing energy work, right? Without even realizing. So since the dawn of human, evolution, since we became upright and walking and interacting with the world, we have this connection. And historically, different cultures call this energy different things. Indigenous people people from all over the world have their own language for how they interact with these unseen worlds. And they have their language for it. Really become more westernized, I guess you'd call it, is the traditions from China, the traditional Chinese medicine with acupuncture and bringing forth an awareness in the Western world about energy. We kind of pull from that, and they have records dating back to like 200 BCE. So it's been documented for thousands of years, really. And then in India with the Vedic traditions, they have it even like back 3000 BCE, written ways of mapping these subtle systems in our body. So when these things have come over, to the Western world, we've pulled in our language, from traditional Chinese, we've pulled from the Vedics. And then there's this, and we think of Eastern medicine and Western medicine, and there's this newer field, which has been around for quite a while now, called integrative medicine, right? Where, the Western medical model will pull in some Eastern philosophies and traditions. And then I foresee, which I would love to see this, that in the future, there's an actual field, and it's already starting to come out with the whole quantum kind of leap we're taking, is just a path called energy medicine, where there's so much research and stuff being done, but where, we honor the Western traditions for what they can do. We honor the Eastern traditions for what they do, but we really cultivate this place where we honor the energetic nature of who we are and bring that forth, that energy medicine path, and kind of think outside of the box in how we will, treat our whole being. Because it feels like to me right now, the energetic aspects of our being are very compartmentalized, and people wanting to go to an energy healer. But our whole Western medicine model is that way right now. We were very integrative and had generalists, and then we went out to specialists. And I feel like we're evolving back into more of, a generalist, but with the awareness of the specialties, which is such a beautiful blend of the two worlds together.
So I love this. I think it's super important, and we've probably, I know I have many examples of where I feel like, I don't want to say Western medicine has failed me, but I also know there's been moments in my life too where Western medicine has been just what I needed. And so it's this idea of the curiosity, allowing for that curiosity of like, what does my body need? What is my body? So it goes back to that whole, like, in what lens do you see yourself? It's not just your physical body. The body is amazing. And, it's like taking a step back and just thinking of how rad the body is, and like all it can do, from how it's, even just digestion. Like, we're not even going to go into that, but that's like one little piece. How about how we digest our whatever energetic stuff we take in? We think of digestion from the physical, but what you're getting at is this whole other field of energy medicine that isn't really even considered in the realm of medicine, and it is just as important, if not more important, on a day-to-day basis, on how to treat our bodies in a way, in our entire bodies, redefining that. Not just our physical, but our energetic, the layers. So I don't know, do you want to go a little deeper on kind of like your, like, the layers of the body?
Yeah, we can totally do that. I want to add one thing to what you just said, is this beautiful space of, our body is this advanced piece of spiritual machinery, right? And we think of it as this physical thing only, right? And the physical thing itself is like, you can study it for years and still not understand it, right? But when we think of this preventative medicine, which I feel like our Western model doesn't do a good job with, right? Our Western model does a great job if and I say this with a grain of salt because, not everything that manifests in our body is something we've ignored, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you think of it from an energetic perspective, if we have ignored this vehicle, it's going to get louder and louder, the physical body being the most dense energy layer. I mean, if you think of these layers, the energy layer that's the most dense is the physical. And that's the place that it will manifest into a way that we can perceive it through our senses. Mm-hmm. Once it's gotten there, then we actually need more physical, tangible things that will shift and change it. But if we get into this preventative view of medicine and wellness, energy medicine is where it's at. Because if we can affect things before they hit our physicality, it's so much easier to change. And it's so much easier to change. And so dropping into the subtle layers of this body. And we'll start with the physical layer. So we have the physical layer, which is the most dense. It's the part of the body that Western medicine treats, right? We have the organs, we have the blood vessels, all of that is located in the physical body. And then we have an etheric body. So an etheric body is one layer, is the first kind of layer of energetic, which is not physically tangible. And the etheric layer is a cell for cell template of your physical body. So if anybody's ever gone to see like a medical medium or a person that, I can't think of the name of what they're called right now. But somebody who like looks at your body in a psychic medium, somebody, or it's, what are they called? Anyway, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. They look at our body cell for cell and they can see if something in your energetic field has a block, or if it's congested, or if there's something in there that's not creating a nice flow of energy. And the philosophy or the theory is that if that congestion stays there for a long time, it'll eventually manifest in the physical layer. So you have that physical layer, then the etheric layer, which is the energetic layer. And then the next layer is, and these are not in any particular order of, closer into our body or further away from our body. It's just a way to kind of talk about them, is the emotional layer. So the emotional layer is this, we can talk about, I like to talk about the mental and the emotional kind of together because they go hand in hand, right? So the emotional layer is our felt sense of our experience in our body in relationship to the world around us. So that's the emotional layer. And we all know kind of the language of emotions, joy, anger, all of those. And the mental layer is our belief systems, right? And they tie into the emotional layer, which we can talk about in a little bit. But the mental layer is, which I believe our Western culture it's the layer that we actually operate through most of the time. It's like, not how do I feel about this, but what do I think about this, right? How do I relate to this with regards to my internal belief systems, how I keep myself safe in the environment around me. So that's the mental layer. And then we have the causal layer, which is this layer that you can talk about it as kind of like a cause and effect, but on a broader scale. Meaning like if you believe in karma or you believe in past lives, this is the energetic layer that all that information is stored on. So that people who do energy healing and will tap into maybe something that's affecting your system that maybe wasn't from your embodiment. It also can be ancestral information that's been handed down on the DNA, right? Through, this epigenetic study is showing that this affects our system as well. So that's the other kind of layer of our body. And just to keep things simple, we'll stop at those basic layers. I mean, there's lots of other things we could go into, but we'll cap it there.
Yeah, and I thank you, Tamara, for that. I think the important part of that is kind of this acknowledgement that there's so much more to us than a lot of times we we consider. And maybe if we're always operating from the mental, making choices on the mental level, we're not considering these other parts of us. Or if we're, say something happens and we're treated in Western medicine to our physical body, and that physical component is healed, that doesn't necessarily mean the energetic associated with that physical is healed. There's still an energetic component to it, which is what you kind of described, the layers that need to be considered as well. Otherwise, unfortunately, it can come back, and it can come back in similar ways or completely different ways. So let's just pause right there and take a moment. We're gonna break here. Before we do that, though, Tamara, can you let listeners know how they can get in touch with you? Maybe share your email address or website, whatever you feel called to share today.
Yeah. Thanks, Tonia. If you would like to work with me, I have a private practice. You can reach me at our healing intentions, ourhealingintentions.com. And my email is Tamara at consciousconnectedhealing.com. And so I have two kind of businesses going on. My Healing Intentions is my in-office one-on-one work. I do distance sessions, in-person sessions. And then Conscious Connected Healing is a program that I'm offering that goes through these topics we're talking about today. So if you're interested in learning about how to use these in your life, how to be a practitioner in this type of work, you can also visit www.consciousconnectedhealing.com for all of that information.
Great. Thanks, Tamara. And we'll be right back. You are joining myself and Tamara Leach, and we're talking about the energetic blueprint, mapping the body's subtle anatomy. And I want to kind of just continue down the rabbit hole that we have started here with you, Tamara, where we're talking about these different layers of the energetic body, kind of building off of where we're at. So can you just take us a little bit deeper into that rabbit hole?
Yeah. So I would love to bring forth a little exercise for us to experience our subtle energy. And when we're going to do this exercise, we're going to close our eyes. And if you're driving, of course, don't close your eyes. But you can kind of tune yourself inward. I mean, one of the beautiful things, or the things we have to begin to explore if we're going to work with this, is cultivating our own awareness and our own sense of mindfulness about what we're experiencing in our own being. That's where we bridge, this gap between our physical and the subtle energetic anatomy. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to close our eyes and we're going to take a couple nice deep breaths. And just find yourself wherever you've landed, whether it's in a seat or if you're standing, feeling your bottom body, that sense of gravity against the chair. And if you're standing, feeling that feet, the gravity pooling at the bottoms of your feet. And you're kind of taking your awareness from the outside world and bringing it in. I like to say breath is consciousness. Right? It's the first thing we do when we enter the world. It's the last. And when we can bring our awareness to the breath, we're bringing our consciousness in our body. Awesome. And then we're going to take our hands and we're just going to gently rub them together until you start to feel a little friction, a little heat. And then we're going to just pull them apart a little bit, keeping our intention inside. And you want to feel the space in between your hands. And that space in between your hands, this language of subtle anatomy, subtle energy is, non-existent kind of in general society. Obviously, if you are, interested in studying it, you probably have some language developed. But Tonia, why don't you just call out maybe what you're noticing in between the space in your hands?
So I thank you for that prompt, Tamara. I was very inward. Thank you for bringing me back a little bit. So I feel kind of that taffy sensation. So that I like to kind of press my hands towards one another and then pull it out. And so it's feeling that, like, I don't know, it's like you can feel that tension pulling apart and then feeling the pressure pushing it back together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you can feel like you said, taffy, right? Mm-hmm. There's like a tingling feeling. Some people will use the tingle or the heat. They maybe feel heat between their hands. And one of the really cool things, I mean, obviously we're just doing this with ourselves right now, but one of the things I like to, when we're first introducing this concept with a group of people, an exercise that I love to do is imagine, like, we don't imagine, we actually do it with one another. We have people lined up facing each other. And so we do this, we rub our hands, we pull them apart, we feel our own energy. And then we put our hands up to one another and we feel their energy, right? And even though we're at a distance, Tonia, I mean, if I intend to send you some energy, you'll feel some tingling in your hands, right? And so when you're in person, you feel that. And then we do a round robin. So then we move to the next person and you put your hands in front of the next person and then the next person. And what you'll begin to notice is that, okay, well, this person feels maybe their frequency or the energy that I'm feeling is a little bit lower. Maybe it feels like those little prickles or the pulsing is moving slower. And then I go to the next person and, oh, this is different, right? And so that really helps us develop this understanding of, like, oh, I am feeling something, right? It's easy with ourselves to be like, oh, is that just my imagination or am I actually feeling something? But when we move by from person to person, we're like, oh, no, that was different than this one, right? And we're like practicing, we're like building this muscle of feeling the energy, right? And so if we do this again, we're going to move it to the etheric fields. We're going to get a feel for the fields. So bring it together again, feel it in our hands. And you can build that a little by pushing against it. And you almost create this like energy ball to where, of course, you could push your hands right through it, but it feels like you're pushing through a cloud or like a density, right? And then if we take this, now we're turning on the sensory system. We're turning on the subtle awareness in our consciousness to sense. If we take that and we move it along our arm, you can feel that energetic layer on your arm. Or you can do it on your head. And when you've taken any Reiki or energy healing modalities, one of the first things you learn is self Reiki. And so we do this as a way to clear, shift. You can set the intention of just allowing that energy to pour in. And you can play with that energy anywhere on your body, on your physical body. Yeah, and we alluded to the distance kind of portion. Energy is transferable, and the beautiful evolution of quantum, biology is that they, have I don't want to call it proven, or they've just done a lot of research on, that idea of a molecule or a cell here can be affected, at any distance. If you affect one, you're affecting another. And we are all made of the same biology, right? So that's kind of how I like to think of distance work. It's like if I imagine you, Tonia, and your body, and I use my body as the vehicle of like, this is my physical reality, and I'm relating it to your physical reality. We are a cell by cell template of one another because we're humans. I can, send that through that quantum field awareness of affecting my cells, and that affects your cells. Right. So, and again, we could go down a whole rabbit hole about quantum or distance work, which I don't know. We want to do that today.
I mean, we'll see. We still have a little bit of time. We'll see what it takes us.
Where we go.
Yeah. I thank you for that. I think that's a wonderful expression of being able to really to just connect with our energetic in a way that I think a lot of people feel like you have to have, this specialized training or, to even touch that. And you had mentioned specifically, thinking of my own journey in Reiki and shamanism and some of these other of the other modalities that really speak to me. Is I know when it wasn't that I was going out to heal others. That wasn't my intention in any capacity. It was because I wanted to figure out how to support myself and how to go inward, because I knew there was a lot to work with. So I was like, okay, I want to, and I'm curious and I'm excited to do that. And so it's so powerful to understand that inward feeling. And so the energy ball piece, I think for me, and then the, being able to connect, because you're right. You mentioned like the distance healing. I think that's, for those of us that do distant healing, it's, I actually prefer it, because to me, it removes the physicality, right? So it's just the energy. And so I know I have there's a couple of people I work with in the Czech Republic who don't speak English. And so and this is where it's like, I know when I first started doing it, I was not quite sure how it was going to work because I only speak English. And I was like, but it's just energy. So we're going to figure this out. They found me somehow. We're going to figure it out. And so what's really interesting is just this being able to move beyond the physical, move beyond language, beyond words, and just work with energy. And to feel like you were describing, like there is the different types of energy, working with like a 3-year-old who I've never met before. And there's a sweetness, like there's just like a sweet and fiery energy, versus, and another, I mean, everybody has their own energy. And so I love that you mentioned that. And I think it just brings in this whole other area of how those around us affect us, that are near us. And then also what's happening on the other side of the world affects us too, even if we put ourselves in a bubble. It's still because we are all connected. And so before we transition, I don't know if you want to go into it all, like, a little bit deeper, and you can say, no, let's move on. Either way. But it's the idea of like how we are so influenced by those on all of the energetic levels, people in our lives, our thoughts. I don't know if there's a thread there you want to pull at all.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's so curious. So I'm trying to think of an example that'll kind of describe that interface, but maybe I'll just start talking about it and see if one pops up. But we have, okay, I'll use the example of going into a grocery store because this is a great one.
Yes.
So if I walk into a grocery store and being an empath, I'll just talk a little bit about empathicness, because this is really related to this whole subtle energy anatomy and why I became interested in it. Is when you're an empath, there's a difference between being empathic and being an empath. And being empathic means I've had experiences similar to the experiences you've had. So I have an internal feeling that is relating to the same experiences you had. So let's say, your grandmother passed away. I've lost my grandmother. I can have that empathy because I know what it feels like to lose a grandmother, right? That's kind of having the empathic, dropping into that, frequency, if you will, right? Being an empath means my system doesn't know the difference between my emotional body and your emotional body. So when you walk into the room, I experience whatever you're experiencing emotionally in my body. And my body thinks, oh, it's me. And my body is so good at telling, or my mental body is so good at telling stories that I can find a story that'll justify that feeling in my body, right? I'll be like, oh yeah, well, I'm feeling all of a sudden anxious. It's like, oh yeah, I'm worried about this talk I'm going to have with Tonia, or whatever, right? Like, because my brain will pick something up and tie it to tell the story that is related to this, right? So when I walk into a grocery store, not thinking about any of this, right, going through my world, I am being inundated with everyone's energetic experience. Right? If I don't go in protected, if I don't go in, and I'll talk about protection in a little bit, but if I go in with the awareness of I'm just, an open channel, right? This is how I used to operate. And I'd go into the grocery store and I'd have like a 45-minute conversation with somebody about how they were doing, because I walked into their field and I'm like, oh my God. And I'd make eye contact, and then they were like, oh, hi. And then we're in this conversation, and I just can't help myself because I can feel what's going on. Right. And so, and that's great. That is not a bad thing. But when I want to move through my day, and maybe I have to go to work, or I have to pick up a child, or I don't have the luxury of always being in that space. So I create a space around me where I tell my system, I'm going into this grocery store and I want a little boundary around me so that my system can have a filter. So it's not just picking up everything that's coming from everybody, right? So if you're empathic, this is something that you have to learn to develop, is a boundary or a way in which I'm keeping my energy grounded within myself. I notice these things around me, but I'm not just going to let it bleed into me, right? And just be this sponge, if you will, of information. Because once that information comes into my system, I have to metabolize it. So we talked earlier about digestion, right? And there's this amazing new field, well, it's new relatively, but psychoneuroimmunology. Right. And their understanding with psychoneuroimmunology that psychologically, whether what's affecting our, I like to call our psychology as our felt sense, right? As our emotions, right? So once I feel something, it's now in my psychology of having to metabolize. The nervous system, again, if we walk into an experience, and it doesn't matter if it's real or imagined, if we don't feel safe for some reason, or we're feeling overwhelmed, it affects our nervous system, right? You can think about being attacked, walking through the forest and a bear jumping out. And I could guide you in a meditation and do that. And your heart rate will increase, your blood pressure, you have a physiological response to it. Even though you're just in your imagination. I say just, but our body doesn't know the difference between a mental projection outside of us and a mental projection inside of us. It doesn't have discernment for that. It's an experience, and it's experiencing it in the now. And so once we're experiencing it in our body, we have to, whether it's psychologically, nervous system wise, it affects our system. And so they're seeing how that affects our immune system, right? So this is all tied together with our health. And so once I go into that grocery store, it's in my being and I have to digest it and process it. And again, if you don't have any tools, you don't, and you walk around and now you're carrying that. And that's going to affect how you see other things, how other things interact with you. It's the lens you're now looking through, right? And so whatever lens you get kind of shifted into until it shifts you out of that lens, right? So if I'm in a lens of anxiety, I'm going to view everything coming at me through, this is not safe. I am not safe here. And then my brain, well, because our brains are designed to keep us safe, is going to show me all the things that aren't safe. It's not going to show me all the things that are safe. It's going to show me all the things that I need to be concerned about. So, wow, that was a big different rabbit hole.
That's so perfect, because I think it resonates with me for certain. I suspect it resonates with a lot of people, because, you could even, this is like even keeping outside of COVID and how that, that influenced our trips to the grocery store. This is just day to day, whether or not it feels safe to go to Costco when it's busy, or Target, or, these larger stores where there's just a lot of energy coming at you. And like you said, I love it is like it is metabolizing, because it's like how, and digesting how that part that's in our field, how we either carry it, keep it within us, or we're able to release it. And I think that's the important piece, is like you described, this idea of we have layers and layers of example within our mental body that suggest going to the grocery store is always going to give us this experience. Or maybe it's I say Costco because I had that from when I still lived in Southern California, and it was just always so busy. And for me, it was just too much, because I didn't, like you described, like the boundaries. I didn't have those boundaries established. Whereas now I just don't like shopping in general. So that's like a totally different thing. So that's
like it happens.
Yeah. It's like I know every once in a while I need to be there, but it's not the same. And I think the boundaries and like the identifying how you're experiencing it, and if it's coming from this moment, or if it's coming from these pulled past experience or projections of what we anticipate is going to happen based on the past. So let's pause right there and take one more break, and we will be right back. Welcome back. I am Tonia, your host of The Alchemy of Me, and I am here with Tamara, and we are going to just wrap things up here. We've been diving a lot into this idea of the blueprint of ourselves and kind of who we are from an energetic, as energetic beings. And so allowing ourselves some space to figure out what kind of tips can we bring forward to really help us gain some of that energetic balance in our lives. So Tamara, what I have for you, or I guess the questions I have for you are, how can we cultivate more health in our energetic bodies? And then maybe why, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but why is that energetic health so important?
Yeah, definitely. I think with the first step with any work in this field is awareness, right? So we cultivate an awareness of ourselves, and we do this through mindfulness. A lot of our culture's we call it like focus is externally on what do I have to do, where do I have to go, and we're really focused on not how we're feeling or what is my sense of self in this moment. It's external. And we really shut down, like, oh, my body's telling me this. It's like, well, I don't have time for that, body. Just be quiet for now. We got to have X, Y, and Z, right? And so the first shift for us, if you have no practice at all, is cultivating awareness. And there's some great simple ways to do that. I'll give you a couple, and then we can see if we have time for more if you want to do something different. One is mindful breathing. So mindful breathing is, you don't have to know anything about breath work. You don't have to know anything about energy work. It's about what we did in that exercise before we did the energy ball, is we closed our eyes and we just followed our breath. Just took a couple nice deep breaths in. And we can do that right now for mindful breathing.
Yeah.
Can I follow the breath in through my nose? Can I feel where the breath, comes in to my nose? So the more kind of specific we make our intentions, the more we develop an awareness of an experience, if that makes sense. So, and then I like to just follow my breath. So I'm going to combine two, mindful breathing and kind of a body scan. So I like to follow my breath in through my nose. See if I can imagine it coming up into my sinuses or feel it. And then I imagine bringing it up behind my eyes. Our eyes are so much part of the social engagement system. If we can close them and imagine them sinking back in our skull and breathing through the space behind them, breathing through those ears. We're creating a whole shift in our orientation system of how we're taking it from external to internal. And so we can use that mindful breathing just anywhere in our body, just noticing where it goes, or we can use it very specifically into different parts of our body. And so when I'm tuning into, okay, where am I at today and where's my body today? I do the full body scan. So I walk through the head like I just did. I bring it into my neck and throat. I bring it into my heart space. I might bring it out the arms. And there's, yoga nidra is if you're interested in having one that guides you, yoga nidra is a guided way to connect to our body, right? So if you're like, oh, I want to practice this and get more body awareness and then this internal sensation, look for a yoga nidra meditation that will walk you through this body scan. It's hard at first to do it yourself, stay present and noticing what you're getting and relax, right? Because you're still engaging your mind. But with practice, the more you do it, the more you can be like, oh, I can walk myself into my body and I can see what I'm noticing. One of the things when I first started, I got into all of this through, of course, massage. But I started yoga, which is a moving meditation, right? You're moving your body into these postures and then you're breathing in to get a sense deeper. If you don't have access to a yoga class or you don't have time to do that, just when you're out walking. So if I'm walking from my car to Costco, or if I'm walking from my car, wherever, it doesn't have to be an event, right? We don't have to carve out extra time in our day. But bringing it into something we already do, which I find when I was trying to make this more of a regular practice in my day, instead of a half an hour meditation in the morning, or I go to an hour yoga class or whatever, I wanted to really have it expand into all that I do. I started doing these things, go from my car to the store. And it's okay, so if I'm doing a mindful movement-based exercise, I can just imagine my feet, my feet hitting the concrete as I'm walking. Okay, I'm expanding my periphery and going, what am I noticing? Am I noticing all the external, the cars, the noise? And I bring it back in. Okay, it's just me and my body and my feet and my breath. And you walk into a store, that's creating a boundary. I'm kind of turning it off. I'm saying, yes, I know you're there, but I'm coming in right now. And it's me, my feet, my breath. Am I relaxed, or am I going into the store like this, right? So bringing myself back inside of myself, my mindful movement, right? How am I walking? Another great one I like to practice is non-judgmental awareness, because my brain likes to be very critical. And so a place of non-judgment awareness is, people are like, oh, my mind just is so judgmental. It's like, we're not going to necessarily turn that off, right? It's not like we have a switch where we can be like, no more judgment, right? How I like to think of it is I'm going to hold judgment over here in this hand. Say, yes, my mind does this because it's trying to keep me safe. Thank you, mind. I appreciate you, right? Giving it some gratitude for what it's really doing. And then in the other hand, I'm saying, and what else? How can I find that place of neutrality where, yes, I see that the lawn needs to be cut, and there's the expansiveness of the present moment without the story of what needs to happen. And so those are some simple exercises that we can do to help cultivate more awareness, drop ourselves inside of ourselves. And I like to think if we can catch ourselves and bring our awareness, 60 times a day for a second, I find that way more helpful in changing our inner ecology than sitting down for an hour once a day and just having this kind of isolated, compartmentalized experience, because it's there, and then we're not bridging it into the rest of our world. And so it's like, I can be really mindful when I'm in yoga or I'm meditating, but in the rest of the world, I'm a ball of anxiety because I can't be mindful. I'm just taking in everything, and it's overwhelming. It's not as helpful as being able to do that 60 times during the day and bringing myself back, calming myself back down, or regulating myself. It doesn't even have to be calming down. It's just an awareness and a regulation of like, yeah, system, this is overwhelming, and let's breathe. I got you. We're bringing yourself back. Yeah.
I really appreciate this thread, because I do think that it's an opportunity to daylight. Some people might not like what I'm going to say, but essentially, yoga once a day is not enough. You kind of alluded to that, but I'm just going to say it because I know for me, when I was really, really having a hard time, what it turned into was me doing yoga 6 days a week, because that was the only 6 hours of the week that life felt really good. Mm-hmm. And that's not living at all. And so what you mentioned with the 60 times a day, it's like, even starting out with, people I work with, I'll say like 3 times a day. Start with 1 minute, 3 times a day, and see what happens, see what magic comes out of that. And then letting that grow, allowing it, instead of it being that 1 hour. Yoga is a beautiful practice, and it's a beautiful modality in this inward journey. And it's also an opportunity, maybe one of many modalities that you can bring in, that we all have access to. What you said was the breath, right? So it's like, if you have no money in the bank account and you're still breathing, you have your breath.
Yep.
So it's, cultivating that, allowing that to come in, if anything else, allowing for that space. And what you had mentioned too, as we wrap up, it's how you described it to me is, it's almost like we're working to create life it's like a walking meditation. So it's like creating that mindfulness in everything we do. If it's from taking a sip of water to walking down the street, in every moment being so present. And with that, it takes a lot of time and practice to get there, and patience, free of judgment, allowing that judgment to be there, not fighting it, because it's part of our the beauty of the mental field. I mean, that's part of us. And if we can accept it and love and nurture, like that's just part of who we are as a humanity, it's actually a lot easier to kind of embrace and live and love life. Mm-hmm. So with that, and again, we could keep talking about this forever, but we have to come to a close. So as we do, is there anything else you want to kind of add there, or do you want to just maybe share with listeners one more time how they can contact you if there's anything else you want to pull in?
Yeah, the last thing I want to add is, cultivating all of this for an awareness of connecting to the truth of who we are, right? So all these practices, help us connect to our subtle anatomy. And the deepest aspect of our subtle anatomy is our soul essence, our spirit body, right? This part of us that's part of God, creation, divinity, whatever your language is, right? So we're getting closer to that truth. And so if you want to connect, you can reach me at Our Healing Intentions or Conscious Connected Healing. And I would love to talk to you more about subtle body anatomy and anything having to do with this realm. It's my passion. Thank you, Tonia.
Thank you, Tamara. And thank you, listeners, for being here on this journey with us. If you want to reach out to me or find out more of what I do, my website is www.ufora.co, ufora.co. Thanks, and have a beautiful day.